Hi, my name's Justice, aka Touchpadwarrior. Somewhere around here.
RagingBeardedScot.
There we go. And
I'm the Tickle.
You're the Tickle?
I'm the Tickle.
You're the
Yes.
Tickle. Dude, are you
Yes.
gonna tickle us?
That's the OnlyFans only.
It's a
Don't be
Patreon
OnlyFans
exclusive.
only. It's not
Yes.
even OnlyFans. It's the OnlyFans only.
Oh yeah. It's a new
It's your
version.
own-
It's the most premier, most exclusive group.
Oh,
Sorry. Speaking of which, I joked about touchmypad.com
Oh.
website, and one of my it wasn't taken domain, and I was a little worried that at one point somebody was going to take it and put some very obscure things on there, and then I would be promoting people to that website. And somebody messaged me like, "Dude, somebody owns it." I was like, "What?" He was like, "I do." I bought it for $10.
You were
I was like, "What
screwed.
the-" I was like, "Oh no."
yeah, no,
Wow.
he can hold that and use it to his will.
Yeah,
God.
will. So yeah, this is my buddy Tickle. I don't know where I'm facing exactly on Scott's.
You're not pointing towards anybody right now. Yeah.
What the fuck am I?
So, Tickle, Touchpadwarrior, RagingBeardedScot. This
Awesome.
week we're going to be hitting on a couple different points. The primary focus, as is Tickle's specialization, is going to be Shamans. Shamans where they are, Shamans where they've been, where they're going, especially with respect to Shadowlands Alpha, which he has been graced with the access to. So he's got a little insider look on that. As we had kind of briefly talked about a little bit earlier, you were excited moving into 8.3 with respect to enhancement Shamans, right?
Yeah. But I mean, one of the things they did, especially in the PvP realm, right, is last season of PvP, it was the most tanky meta I've ever seen. It's the most if anyone in 3v3 arena that was high rated, had both 2 tank trinkets, had the most dampening specs possible. I mean, it was just like a dampened war. And for enhanced, that is the worst because we cannot roll tank specialization. We can't get those tank trinkets unless we charm people like Touchpad over here to ghost prot, trade us the trinkets, and even then we're just not as competitive. So going in after 8.3, in the new season, they nerfed those trinkets, so the self-healing was out of it. They brought in the whole new essences like Reaping Flames, Corruptions came out, and now people just die and just randomly to corruption damage. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that changed.
I gotta say, it's a great season for me to really start getting hardcore into PvP and climb some rating and be like, oh, it's chaos. It doesn't matter. I don't know if I'm performing better.
Yeah.
Something killed me out of bumfuck nowhere.
Yes.
I've always been the kind of PvPer that we go for the mounts, we go for the 1800 armor
yes.
set, and that's the extent of my experience. A lot of that has to do with just not. I think PvP is very similar to Mythic Plus in the way that if you have a team, if you got people that you trust and can communicate efficiently with, then you can really excel.
Yes.
And I play the pug game where after 2 games, if you don't win, you just eject, and then you spend a couple hours doing that. And then you go and cry in a corner of your room because nobody loves you and you don't love yourself anymore after that.
Yeah.
So.
That sounds about right. And being yelled at and called bad and all that stuff. That's always so nice.
You know what? I found that actually drops off around the 1600 point. People don't say that anymore. They just kick you.
They just get them.
No, right, they still do.
Yeah. So moving to 8.3 is out of the 3 specializations, is enhancement then the one that you've kind of been focusing on, or is elemental?
It's a good point. So I've been focusing I've been playing Elemental as well. Elemental is still in a pretty decent spot because of the game still being fast paced and the burst being pretty good. But for Enhanced, the reason I wanted to focus so much on that is because everyone hates on Enhanced so much, and every season of PvP and BFA, except for season 1, Enhanced has not been competitive. It's been very sad, and there are a lot of really diehard Enhanced people out there. I know there's a few specks of people that are the most stubborn people. Some of them are Fury Warriors. Some of them are Beastmaster Hunters, and then the other group is Enhanced Shamans, and actually Feral Druids too. But
Paladins. I feel like
yeah,
any of the specs that in Classic they had a DPS spec that you just couldn't play, and so anybody that played those specs back then was so determined to do so.
Exactly.
That's why I've been playing an Arms Warrior for 15 fucking years, because I'm tired of people telling me to tank. I'm like, I'm not a tank. I can damage, damn it. Please.
You literally have 2 viable specs you can choose from.
Yeah. It feels bad, but so that's why I picked up Enhanced this season to try to push on, just to get some rating and get some momentum and faith back into the spec, because a lot of people hated on it. There's clips even of Peekaboo saying Enhanced is total garbage, and okay, maybe it's not the highest tier 1 comp, maybe it's not what you're gonna, maybe there won't be any rank 1s again at the cutoff. Maybe it's too high for enhance, but at least it's not total crap. Now, there was also something on WoW that had enhance was like C. It was graded C. The only thing below it was an outlaw rogue, and so it's just like that. Those are the types of things that motivate me to kind of at least showcase, hey, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show you that it's fun. I show you that we can have a good time, and that it's not total. So that's why this time around I did focus on that. Yeah.
Well, I definitely find that I'm doing that too a lot with my ults. Is like I'll play this back then nobody wants to play because I'm like, I bet there's a lot of fun behind it, even if it might not be the most viable. As long as you're having fun doing it, it's a video game. You should be doing that. And so if you can prove that it's viable, then go for it.
And with the exact same mindset behind, I mean, I had balance to choose from for DPS, or I had Resto, two extremely viable, very, very highly sought after for Mythic Plus, PvE, raids, and I chose Feral, and then as a backup, I played Guardian. And it is, it's either because the class I find doesn't fill the utility role that a lot of others can and do what that class does, that spec it does as well, or as with Feral, and I think Enhance is a little bit of the same way. It's got a little bit higher skill cap, and I think when some of those guides are being made, that is what's being taken into consideration. How few buttons can you hit, and how much can you look away from your computer screen and still do crazy damage, have high survivability, have stuns, utility, etc., and that's why you see things like Demon Hunters being overplayed. So the reason, I choose Feral because I can play Feral at a high enough skill level and perform admirably enough, and I stand out. Whereas if a Demon Hunter is ranking 3 or 4 on the top DPS and raid, nobody bats an eye. Why aren't you first? Is what they're saying. So that does make it a lot more fun. And in my opinion, there's a lot more pride in excelling at those classes than just crossing your hands and praying to the RNG gods that you get the correct gear, because somebody said that the other day. That's essentially what differentiates Demon Hunters from each other is RNG.
I totally agree. And some people said going into 8.3 with the whole corruption system, they're saying, okay, well, Enhance might only be viable because of corruptions. I don't think that's necessarily the case, because of even in Mythic Pluses, Enhanced Shamans aren't there was someone on the front page of Raider.io for a while into 8.3 where he was an Enhanced Shaman that was part of the top key group.
I think that's his name. Does Grok, does that ring a bell?
Maybe.
He used to be, he was an Enhanced Shaman. He was in my guild at the beginning of the BFA, and we used to push keys together, and then when the guild broke up, he took off, and he was 3.4, 3.5 as an Enhanced Shaman, which was absolutely nutty to see. But it's another instance of somebody taking something that is deemed the underdog and really making it flourish. And with those things, when you start bumping up the score, when you start bumping up your rating in PvP, you start bumping up your rating in IO, you get noticed. It's a lot easier to see. You know what? I want to run with this guy because he knows something that other people don't.
Yeah, and it is part of the corruption system was nice because for example, the raw den weapon, that's what all the Enhanced Shamans are going for, to stack those, because it does so much damage. And luckily, that's not necessarily RNG as much as some of the other ones like Infinite Stars or Mind Flayed. It's something that will eventually get 100%. You will happen. So that was nice, and seeing him on the ladder, definitely inspires people. And then back to what you said about the complexity, I agree. Enhanced Shaman, understanding what buttons to press and why and when is even now is tough. And then in Shadowlands it'll be even more with all the keybinds that are coming in. But to your point, there are 2 buffs on Enhanced that you're expected to keep up at all times with they're up for 20 seconds. So you have to keep those refreshing and rolling. I'm trying to think of it. It's it's Flame Tongue and Frostbrand, and they come out to be 2% of your overall damage, but it's part of the rotation. So it's that's garbage. Why do I maintain this buff? You have
to do it.
Yeah, you have to do it, or you're just ugly. Because but I don't know any other class that has to maintain that type of thing. And so that's definitely something that someone might get confused. It might be oh, I have to refresh it, and they refresh it when it's at 15 seconds. Right. A less experienced player might be oh, I have to keep this going, and because Enhance is so proc based. Oh, Storm Strike proc. Oh, this proc. It's that's a lot to manage at once. And so I think it is one of the things that makes it complex. So luckily those things are going away in Shadowlands. So
okay, so that was going to be my next question. I know with Feral Druids moving into Shadowlands, and not just Feral Druids in general, they're having, I think I called it last week, this simplification and expansion of the class as a whole, where they're kind of stripping down some of the finer points that have kind of been built up over the years and expanding some of the toolkit that has been available to other specs to all specs. And I think this adding more buttons to push, because we've been seeing for a number of expansions now, Blizzard adding a couple extra buttons to hit here, a couple extra buttons to hit here, and then at the end of the expansion, they take them away, like with the artifact abilities and actually, I guess we didn't really get anything for BFA. We had the proc stuff.
Yeah.
But they're now expanding the toolkits and expanding the number of buttons that we have pretty significantly, at least for Druids, which is going to be interesting, seeing the number of niches that each different spec and class are able to fill, having a much more diverse toolkit to pull from. So I think having additional buttons that they can interact with, instead of just, for instance, waiting for those proc buttons to light up, may help create a little bit more fun and diverse playstyle for some of these classes, because nobody likes dead air. Nobody likes just sitting there waiting for the next button to hit. And that is why you'll have new players hit that flame tongue, the flame tongue, because they need to hit something. They need to hit it. They feel like if they're not hitting a button, they're not generating energy, they're not prepping to deal more damage, and that is one of the things that make these skill classes like like Enhance and Feral something that people don't enjoy playing, because there's forethought that's required into your rotation, and if you don't do that, there's a lot of dead air, and it just isn't enjoyable.
So what are some of the things added to Shaman?
Well, good question. So so a few things that changed for Enhance and ended up changing for LA2 is they're removing the Maelstrom generation system. So in BFA, you use Rockbiter or if I think Melee Strikes even can proc Maelstrom. So you're going to be generating Maelstrom up to 100, and then you spend Maelstrom through your Storm Strikes, through your Lava Lashes, through healing, through Crash Lightning, and so you it's a builder spender type rotation. So on top of those two 18-second buffs you have to keep a track of, you have to keep track of Maelstrom, and then you have to do the builder spender around your procs. It's really a lot to handle. So what they've done is they've totally removed Maelstrom. They've increased a few of the abilities cooldown. So I think like Lava Lash, for example, which was a spender which you could spam, now has like an 8-second cooldown. And Rockbiter, I think, got like maybe a few more seconds of a cooldown. So they made it so you're not builder spender. Nothing costs anything. It's just cooldowns, which is really nice. And they also got rid of those buffs, Frostbrand and Flame Tongue. So those are 2 less globals every 18 seconds you have to press. And so now it's all about kind of the core Shaman, Enhanced Shaman abilities, which is Storm Striking, which is a kind of your big hit. You have a Rockbiter, which is kind of now this weird filler because it doesn't generate anything. So what is it really doing? So that's kind of an odd one that people are like, but it doesn't do anything now. It's like, well, it didn't always used to do stuff. It's a button to hit. And then you have Lava Lash, which is kind of a longer CD ability. So those are kind of like your main, the crux of Enhanced Shaman. So those are all things that we've had. Those are all things that every Enhanced Shaman now will be like, oh, okay, so you're getting rid of all the annoying stuff and stuff I have to track, and now I focus on, okay, what's my highest damaging ability to press, not what to maintain. You're not maintaining Maelstrom, you're not maintaining those buffs, you're not maintaining another thing was like stacks of Lightning Shield, like all this stuff you had to keep in mind of. No, now it's just down to the core, like intentional gameplay, like, okay, is a Storm Strike up? All right, hit that. Okay, my second priority is Lava Lash. All right, then it's Rockbiter. Yeah, and so what they've been able to do too is include some talents that even make it even like more flavorful. So now you could proc a Lava Lash that hits for like a lot, and you could proc a Storm Strike. So you can alternate those that rotation down. So they did a lot of cleaning up, but yeah, so that's what they did there. But to your point on like bringing back a ton of abilities class wide, Shaman, and people know from like back in the day, right? Totems. And they're hybrids, right? Totems. So, they brought back a lot of different, I wouldn't say they didn't bring back a ton, but like things like Searing Totem, which is a totem you put on the ground and it just shoots a little fireball. Yeah. It doesn't even do that much.
No. Yeah. So they thought it was useless back in Classic, but it was something you had to put down. So
I was going to say, that was like one of the first totems you got, and it was like getting your hunter pet.
The fire totems you had like Fire Nova, you had there was what was the bursting one? No, Fire Nova was the bursting one. There was one that just like Magma Totem, I think it was.
Magma, yep.
Just randomly like passively AoE things, and then Searing. And so you pretty much just had to have Searing down at all times. I remember being an Elemental Shaman in Burning Crusade and doing, because I rated on Justice and on my Shaman, and I was like, when we had too many melee, I had to be ranged. And I had an add-on called Got Wood. that would tell which totems were going to expire and like what to have down at all times.
Yeah, okay.
And have that in the corner. I saw some video somewhere of like being in a hydro, seeing got wood in the corner, and like, it was just something default you had to have down. Everybody made fun of it.
Yeah.
Then they got rid of it. They're like, okay, we get it. You don't like it. They're like, hey, where's my searing totem?
Yeah,
Yeah.
got used to it. Yeah,
like
they
to-
normalized the
Doing
misery.
things. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, you can have it back. People are gonna be like, cool, yay, I think maybe.
Yeah,
So-
and that, yeah, they go back to the same argument. This doesn't do anything. It's like,
That was neat.
Two questions off of what you just said. So the your two rolling buffs that you said that they had just kind of removed.
Yeah.
Is there anything that they've added to replace those kind of self buffs, or is it, through the totems that you're getting back? Are you getting, because both of those abilities, correct me if I'm wrong, they were applications to your weapon that caused your just melee strikes to deal more damage and whatnot. Is there anything that shamans are getting back to replace those abilities?
that's a great question. So what they did is, I'll go one for one. So Flame Tongue, which was just a buff you put on your weapon and just did more damage. What they're doing now is they brought back the weapon imbue system, which people might recognize from Classic. They might recognize from other things. And so what does that mean? That means you actually have a skill that applies a buff to your weapon. And so for Flame Tongue, they made Flame Tongue back into buffing the weapon, which adds a swirly to it. And what that does is something similar. It makes it so anytime you get a melee attack with your offhand, it procs an additional damage. But it's on it says 30 minutes on the tooltip, but it lasts for 60 minutes. So I don't know which one it's going to be, but that's not 18 seconds. So that's really nice. And they did make that, interact with Lava Lash as well. So Flame Tongue, if you have, there is a correct way to imbue your weapons. So your offhand has to have Flame Tongue, because Lava Lash will do 100% more damage when you have it buffed with Flame Tongue. So that's nice.
Is there anything in the game right now that's similar to or akin to, like, to me, right off the bat, that sounds a little bit like Death Knight's enchanting, or what is it called?
Runeforging?
Powering. Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
also like the
their
poison
weapon,
system with robes.
but it's
Yep.
a time thing. The imbuing your weapons does not remain, as it's not a permanent. You have to go back and continue to do it.
Yeah, I would say probably to Justice's point, probably closest to poisons, except it doesn't apply any debuff. It's just adding damage. But the one cool thing is that they made it so that when you get a Wind Fury proc, so Wind Fury is like core element or enhanced shaman, where if you hit, you have a chance to get additional attacks. Yeah, exactly. So if you hit melee once, you can get a double Wind Fury proc, so you melee 2 more times. Each of those hits counts for your offhand proc. So Flame Tongue will proc 3 times instead of just once. So it's actually ramping up that auto attack Wind Fury damage, which is kind of like the core enhance. And then the other imbue is that's Flame Tongue for the offhand. For your main hand, you put on Wind Fury. So that's the one that I just mentioned. You have a 25% chance when you hit to get 2 additional melee procs off of that. So kind of all working together.
It procs with both melee weapons that you have in your hand, or just the main hand?
I guess so because it procs Flame Tongue. It's a good question, because I was thinking the same thing. Okay, well, does it proc like offhand, main hand? It doesn't think about it that way anymore. I guess it's all just a melee hit, which is kind of weird to say it like that, but that's kind of how it's.
So I'm also
calculated.
assuming Frostbrand weapon imbue is also available
Well,
again to slow, right?
Great point. Again, so the other buff you had to keep up was Frostbrand. That's out of the game completely. What they've done to replace that for a slow is they added Frost Shock to Enhanced Shaman, which is actually really cool, because that means, well, Frostbrand was kind of ranged anyway. Yeah.
It had
Yeah.
Like there's so many weird systems you could do. Like if you had Rockbiter imbue and you Earth Shocked, it taunted the target.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
In Wrath, I made a 70 Shaman Twink, and I got him the Bulwark of Azeroth and a Brutalizer, like all this defensive stuff, and I made him a Shaman tank. And I would rock into dungeons in my Shaman tank, and it would taunt things. I had 18,000 health.
Yeah.
Stupid,
beautiful
but
thing.
it was fun, so it didn't matter. Like,
Well, I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
For that, you can actually put on a shield now as an enhanced shaman.
Hey.
Right now you can't do that in BFA, but you can do it in there. The only bad thing is you can't like Storm Strike. You can't use like some of your abilities.
Right.
But you can actually put on a shield. I think in BFA you can. I don't know.
Because that's
I'm not
how it
sure.
works. If you were wondering what that about Warriors was like, because of adding Spore Reflect and then having Shield Block and Shield Slam, which is great because it'd be an offensive dispel. They were like, okay, do you have to start like making stance macros to like make these things work? It's like, no, because you're not gonna be able to switch weapons in combat. And the whole reason they got rid of that system is because everybody had to default use these macros to do so.
Right.
We're just making it not a thing. And then also it would like high-end raiders and stuff, they would change out their weapons for different enchants based on what they had to do in the encounter to reset the cooldown for your enchants. So it's an avalanche effect of bullshit. So there must be like, if you're able to use a shield in alpha, maybe they're kind of hinting at like maybe there's like something you can kind of tinker with.
I hope so. I hope so, because that is one of my yeah, it would be like, that's like one of my dream changes for Shaman, is that they get a 4 spec of tank.
Aside from
that would be
also
We've
having
been playing around with it since the beginning.
Right, yeah, since Classic, when they would tank, 5-mans and stuff like that. So
yeah,
weren't they originally supposed to have a tanking spec? That's why they were given shields, and they had one of their abilities, increased threat.
Yeah, Rockbiter and Earthshock, I mean, there's still time to make up for it. That game designer is still out there in the world right now. He's just sitting in his shack right now saying, I just wish they would have let me.
So with a question about like talking about weapon specialization and stuff with the class, it's like, so they're talking about bringing back single minded fury for Fury Warriors as an option. There's also confirmed that Frost DKs are going to be able to have 2-hand or dual wield as an option. There's just this thing that you go for it. How would your thoughts be if they brought back like 2-hand enhance as like a PvP option?
I would be super excited. That was actually the very first thing I did when I logged into the alpha. I switched from Ellie to enhance, and then I just looked at all the abilities. I was like trying to figure out if it would be possible. And it's not based on the current design, but I would want it to. And every forum post I've seen about enhance is like, let me give you some feedback on enhance in the alpha. Yeah, 2-handed should be in the game, and then just whatever else they said. Like every single person. But I think like they've confirmed like that it's not. But here's the thing, like what they did to Frost DK, because I did test that a little bit, is they basically made it so that the gameplay is exactly the same, with the 2-hander versus dual wield. So if you like, it feels the same. Rune generation is the same. The only thing that's different is you can have 2 rune forges on 2 weapons versus 1. Like that's the only difference. But like if they did that with enhance, to just change the abilities to make it so that it just works with a 2-hander, or at least seems to work with a 2-hander, people would be so happy.
Fun and like
exactly. Even if it's appearances,
because it's all personal loot now. So like what? Yeah. What's the harm? Give the people what they want.
Especially based on what you said earlier, where they don't count the offhand as an offhand hit. They're counting them as melee hits. The system's in there to clearly make that a reality, because they're just counting it as a melee hit anyways, whether it's 2-hand or 1-hand or 2-hander. Yeah, that would be awesome to see that change come in. The second thing that I was kind of curious of is you talked about, kind of reducing the cooldowns that you have to track and the uptimes. Does it seem like the I don't want to say the simplification, but kind of bringing things down that you have to manage is kind of making way to start to look at the Covenant systems, the Covenant abilities that you have? Does it seem like they're doing that so that you can then start to focus on these new abilities that we're getting through the Covenants, or are they really trying to focus on bringing the classes down to their core, and then the Covenant things are just kind of added on there?
I really think that it is pushed towards class design. Because if you pick up any class and you play across all the specs, pretty much you get that core set of abilities. And for some classes, that is actually most of their abilities. Like Warlock, like Destro has like 4 abilities in the Destro tree. It has like Chaos Bolt, like few things. But like with Shaman has a lot of stuff in the Shaman tree. So definitely, I feel like they're pushing you towards that generic and that kind of like general Shaman flavor. The Covenant abilities are. It's interesting because they're so different for every single class I've played, and of course you're only able to try one Covenant kind of abilities set of them right now, but they are so different. Yeah. So with that, like, they're just so diverse, and I almost feel like I almost wonder if they're purposely making some of them not as good or appear not as good as others, so that there's some diversification. Like for example, like there's a DK one that I personally like didn't find very interesting or exciting. It like puts a dot. I don't even remember what it does. It's just not memorable to me.
That's how sad it was.
Yeah,
you played it for a while and you're like, whatever.
Yeah, like but the Shaman one I actually really like, because again, it kind of plays towards Shaman of a totem. So you put a totem down, and based on that totem's radius, the next 3 attacks you do will make that totem proc an AoE kind of bubble of damage 3 times. for your next 3 attacks. And then your heals, though, will also heal in a bubble around that totem. And that is actually really cool. I think that's really cool for Mythic Plus, but it's also really cool for PvP because of like the healing factor is I feel like 2 times the factor of like the damage that you get. Like damage is nice, like of course, but the fact that it procs so much healing is pretty interesting. And that's like one thing.
Like survivability for enhanced Shamans.
Yeah.
So I feel like the only way to do it is like either give them some kind of crazy tankiness set, or like have them being almost like the equivalent of demon hunters, where it's just they have so much like healing output, not necessarily leech, but healing output to themselves, that it makes it so it's like, okay, we kind of have to worry about this dude over here.
Yeah,
it's going to be like a one-man army.
Yeah, well, that's one thing about Enhanced that's pretty cool in this iteration of it, which is apparently going back towards MOP version of it, because they have the Maelstrom weapon buff, which is coming into play, which is every time you melee, you have a chance to proc a Maelstrom weapon buff. It stacks up to 5. It reduces your cast time of your next ability by 20%. So this means if you get 5 stacks, you can instant cast a heal.
Okay. Or Hex.
Well, no. So I thought Hex too, but I know. But apparently it's only healing or damage, and that doesn't count. But what's cool though is like now baseline Shaman has chain heal. So now an enhanced Shaman can chain heal their raid, their party, their raid. You know, they have a lot of
utility.
That could be good. Yeah. So and even in PvP, you have 3 people chain heal. I think it bounces off of 3. So like that's pretty cool for enhanced Shaman.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier about like classes versus specs, like Shamans, enhanced Shaman specifically, well, I guess it's for all Shaman. Like baseline Shaman now has chain heal, like I mentioned. It now has healing stream totem, which healing stream totem is actually, I think, one of the moves of Blizzard to make enhanced Shaman more tanky in PvP and potentially more useful in PvE. So what it does is it, similar to Reso's only had it until now, but you drop a totem. The totem will heal any one person at a time in like a 20-yard radius for like a certain amount. But it's on a 30-second cooldown, lasts for 15 seconds. But it cumulatively heals for about 22% of your HP, which is actually a lot.
Yeah.
And the other good news is that it's not like a 5 HP searing totem. It actually has like 10% of the player's health. In its HP. So it actually will take it'll take like 4 abilities from someone else. Exactly. So
it's like,
you can't just use a throwing weapon.
Or actually focus on like nuking this turn.
Yeah, and so technically that in itself is almost like a damage reduction. If you think they're gonna either heal it or they're gonna.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's interesting. A lot of people aren't really satisfied with that from an enhanced Shaman, like survivability. They want more, and that's kind of been the complaint of enhanced along BFA has been they're super squishy. And they're like not really viable because they don't have as much toolkit as some other classes, like a DH or a Windwalker or things like that.
In my opinion, with some of those things, I kind of like the approach that in MOBAs they do, where it's like whenever they introduce a new character that you can play or champion, they make it really crazy strong because they want people to try out playing that character because it needs to get a lot of testing to balance it out. And then they nerf it. It used to be the opposite. It used to start off super weak, and then nobody wanted to play it. It's like, well, we have no testing or data to be able to back up what needs to be buffed. So, public opinion really matters with these things. And I feel like Enhanced Shaman and LA, obviously for a long time, because Elemental Shaman was my thing. I really love Elemental. But surprisingly enough, I actually like Shaman more than my Warrior. Seems crazy. It's true. But I played a Warrior for so long that it stayed my main, and I kept raiding on it, so it stayed my main. But like I said in Burning Crusade, I did multi-main, like because based on certain encounters, if we had too many melee or too many range, like I would switch my class of what I played. I had double 4 set on my LA Shaman. Like I had T6 4 set and like the Gladiator set, and I would just go pump things. It was so much fun. I loved it so much, even if it was a turret and we didn't even have to. You know how mind blown I was when we got a different school of magic to use as an Elemental Shaman? I was like, I have fire now. I can't just get locked out of everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, I digress.
Well, to your point though, one other thing about Enhanced Shaman that they're bringing back, which I think is actually like a super big deal, is that they now will bring back Wind Fury Totem. So that is a buff to your party. Or actually, now it's not. It used to be party wide. I don't remember when it was party wide, at least in Classic. Now it is. I'm pretty sure it's raid wide. So it's a 2-minute buff, and it's like a X% chance for anyone with that buff when they melee to proc an additional melee. So that of what?
Lust.
Right. Well, actually, you can have it up 100%. The cooldown is 0. So in raids,
so
there has to be an enhanced shaman.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So in raids, there has to be enhanced shamans. And then you think about like maybe what does this do to Mythic Plus? Like, does that could there be Wind Fury related builds? Like what melee is a ton and it's super important? Oh, a warrior.
I mean, Just think about having. I mean, you've got demon hunters with the magic buff to anything that they attack. You got monks of any spec with the attack power or any physical damage buff, and then you bring the shamans in there. You got people hitting twice as much. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and that's honestly a lot of the changes that they're making have me even more excited to watch future MDIs because I think we're going to see an initial obviously breakaway from what the meta is and a lot more testing out, and I'm hoping that the changes that they've made to AoE encourage other classes and other specs to come in because it's not going to be the mindset is not going to be pull everything, cleave it down as fast as we can. They're going to do everything they can to try to get back to that, but I think it's going to be done a little bit more interesting than having a DK just army of the dead every single mob, essentially between each boss.
Right.
So
but that's a good point actually with the AoE thing, right? I actually think that might be the most like pivot. I think it might be like a pivot point for like the MDIs and being able to bring other classes. Because I don't know how they're figuring it out, like how many, like which one is which, right? Like I've been like specifically focusing on that, like just trying to sense that in the alpha too. Like for example, like it's like barrage from a hunter, which is like the frontal cone that just like shoots a ton of bullets. That only hits 8 mobs, and that used to hit all of them. And I was thinking to myself, like, why 8? Like that's such a strange number. You used to hear things like Blade Dance does 5, certain things do all, but like it seems to me like I feel like that's going to be a really big deal. And if they tune it right, they might be able to bring back certain classes like Enhanced Shaman. Like if I use Crash Lightning, which is an AoE frontal cone, it will make all my Storm Strikes and Lava Lashes hit everything in front of me. So that's still the case. So they actually didn't nerf that for Enhance.
But it brings them up to the competitive level as some of the other ones. Okay.
Right.
Cool.
So now you're starting getting things like you have Windfury Totem, you have an Ankh, which isn't a battle res, but it's like the next best thing, I guess.
Hey, you're back.
Yeah, and now you have like potentially really good AoE from that. And oh yeah, by the way, what I didn't mention is that Enhance now has Chain Lightning that gets procced by the Maelstrom weapon, like that. So their cleave potential could be really cool. I mean, and they still have Sunder, which hits all targets. So I definitely see, like, obviously I know more about Enhance, but like those types of changes across all classes could make for some interesting compositions, I hope.
Yeah, there's always going to be bosses and encounters that favor melee over range, anyways. In the same way that the counter is true as well. So it'll be interesting to see. I would love to see a situation in which you can have people swap back and forth between Enhance and Ellie seamlessly and not feel like the team's getting wing clipped or seriously missing out on something. It's really filling a niche, and it goes back to what they were really focusing on in Legion, which I think everybody pretty much unanimously loved, was class identity, and that is a big thing. It seems like they're moving into with giving all specs these very diverse abilities that are inherent to that class. Sorry, Justice, not to interrupt you.
It's okay. I don't know, not important to you.
No, please.
No, one of my points, I hate backtracking myself so much, but it's the public opinion of Enhance was that like, okay, it's dog shit.
Yeah.
And even though Blizzard tried to make changes to make it so it would be better, it still didn't change public opinion. So the way to change public opinion would be like over buff the shit out of it. So people are like, oh, this guy's playing Enhance, and then like he does one ability and out damages every 1 second. We're like, what the hell? And then it gives everybody a chance to try it.
Right.
It changes the overall opinion of it. I really feel like that's one of the only moves they could make for it. Like the classes that have been kind of on the lower scale for a long time, they need to be like a little overtuned. I would be totally okay with it. I'd be upset for a little while, but I'd be okay with it because it'll curve that public opinion, which matters more. Because when going into raids, going into dungeons, going into PvP, you see these classes, and especially like, oh, I don't think so.
Well, having played so many different having played so many different classes over the years, my thought on when they do that with a class is it's good for a while, and it'll definitely retain some people, but when they do inevitably nerf it back down to where other classes can stay competitive with it, you will see a large drop off because you do have a lot of people that chase the meta nowadays.
Right.
Is that a better alternative, Justice and Tiqqle? Is that a better alternative to lowering the skill cap it takes to play that class to encourage other people to test it out? Because there are a lot of classes, Tiqqle was talking about it on stream last night. There are a lot of classes that people just don't play because it's not easy.
No.
It takes a lot. It may not be something that they're looking to play as a main, and so they're not putting as much time into researching the forums, researching the charts and simming and all that stuff to make it work. Is it better to increase the damage and output and make it just a crazy rage monster, or is it better for the long term for the the sustaining the player base for that spec to lower the skill level and then slowly build it back up over time?
I'll let you go first, Tickle.
I think I don't know if this is a cop out, but I think both. I think that from
all right, so
that's a cop out.
I was ready with an answer. I was like, well, let the guy that knows. I think it's better to have it overtuned at the start.
Okay.
Especially with having, like, now that we do this level squish, that it kind of incentivizes other people to come back into the game and test some things out. If they come in and, like, they know, what does your friend say whenever you have them join a game, right? Brand new game they're playing. It's like, hey, what should I play? What's strong?
Yeah.
Right? That's what they care about. It's like broken down, that's what they care about. And like their friends can tell them, this thing's really strong, you're gonna have a good time. And so they play it. And so I feel like you need to get people a taste of these things. What do you do in a restaurant when you're trying to promote a new item, right? You add a discount to it. It's like, oh yeah, try this thing. This thing tastes great. Like what? And like, so keep trying this, keep trying this. Okay, now that you've had that, how about all the other items that we serve? So it's like the same thing with classes.
Right.
Like this class is really strong, it's really cool, but also this is kind of cool. You want to try this maybe? And so like I feel like that having that be one of the classes that's like this crazy hybrid and like hasn't ever been like too much in one strong suit point or another.
Yeah.
Giving them a little bit of a bolster, a little bit of boost, even if it's only for like a month, could really help herd people into being like, yeah, I remember that being really strong. I'm gonna try to give that a whirl again. Even though they balanced it out. It's not nerfing, it's balancing out. I think the key words really matter a lot when introducing these types of concepts. So like people are gonna say like, oh well, Enhance got nerfed. It's like it got balanced.
Yeah.
It's now competitive with Shadow Priest, Warrior, Feral Druid,
Right.
Like Destro Lock. Like if I ever hear like that Enhance is going to be as competitive as Destro Lock, I'm gonna be like, okay, cool, I'm going to give that a whirl. I don't remember.
Yeah, right,
That sounds
right.
amazing. Yeah, I'll take a taste. So I feel like it's better to have buffed too strong and then nerfed down. More so because of having years of exposure that's negative.
Yeah. No, I
try to balance out the
agree.
mindset.
Well, I'll defend my position in one way. I think Blizzard, like, I think it happens in League of Legends. I don't play League of Legends that much, but I feel like
Just cut this out. Don't worry.
I think Blizzard needs to come in with like, they don't do balancing changes very often. I feel like if they really went in, even I don't know if like other games do it to shake things up or if they're actually trying to just tune things down and then that makes people figure out the new meta. I feel like if Blizzard took like a monthly approach to like changing things up, it would deter people from being flavor of the month related, especially because you're trying to you're trying to get the most flavor of the month character as geared as possible because gear matters in PvP especially. If they got rid of that and they started doing like they set the expectation, we're gonna tune things monthly to try to be balanced. Even if they're off 1 month, maybe they'll be back on track the next month. If they did that drastic of tuning that frequently, I think people would stick to classes they actually like and figure out how to make the best of it.
Which is what you should do in a game like this.
Well,
yeah, you
That's why I
should.
played a warrior for 15 fucking years. Because I love that style. I love playing that character. I love promoting that class. And also I would rather take a enhanced shaman that's an absolute god, even if they're not like the best on the tier, over a Destro Lock that I don't know.
Right.
Like that's the choice I would like to make. It's like, this guy's a master of his class, or I'm going to take the guy that just boosted a character.
Yeah.
That's what I see. That's my opinion.
Part of the problem with that though is, and it's not Blizzard's problem, it's the community's problem that they would have to get over is you have people spend so much time chasing the meta and they'll make they'll gear it up, they'll spend a week and a half of just like 15 hours a day on World of Warcraft going absolute ham, and then if next month that is all of a sudden not the meta, they're going to feel personally attacked and slighted, and they won't know how to wait a month for it to come back up, especially in a game where every 6 months we have a new patch come out that really flips things on its heads typically. So that would be nice, and that honestly is a great way to do it. But it's one of the reasons that games like League of Legends can do it, because there's not player progression when it comes to the character that they play.
That's fair.
So that's why it makes it a little different, because you do, with a game that is so heavily based on RNG, it doesn't matter how much they take out of it. They can't take it all out, because that is the core of the game, is the RNG on getting the loot, the RNG on getting the procs.
If we really get everything within a week, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, every single time we swing a weapon, there's a dice rolling in the background to see exactly how much damage is done, if it's going to crit or not.
It's actually me. I do all the dice.
Yes. I just throw sweaty naked dude rolling a dice in the background.
Why do I gotta be sweaty and naked?
I didn't say it was you.
I said it was me. That was your next turn.
to touch on a point you said earlier, you're clearly a much better friend than I am, because when my friends ask me what they should play, I just figure out what my party needs to fill, and that's what I tell them to play.
Okay, we're gonna get off topic here for a second. Do you guys know why I played a warrior? Because all my friends in middle school, because that was when I was playing 15 years ago, they were all playing ranged and all this stuff and DPS. They're like, I was like, okay, fine, I give in. Like, I'll play. They're like, what do you want to play? I was like, I don't know. I was like, do you want to be like the big burly dude that saves the day? I was like, sure. They had me playing Prot Warrior with a two-hander for 50 fucking levels.
Wow.
They didn't even know anything about the game. It took me going over to my buddy's house who found out he played WoW too, and he was actually raiding in like Blackwing Lair and shit in AQ40 as a Fury Warrior. He was like, hey, why do you have concussion blow on your bar? You have a two-hander on, and then play Alex helmet. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that's my 5-second stun. It's beautiful. I love it. Like, I did not know.
Oh, child.
For so long. Because like 1 to 50 took forever. That took me like 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, classic. And they're just like, yeah, be the big burly dude that saves the day. And I did nothing right for the first.
Do you think you could get back in touch with those friends? Because we need some more range players in the game.
No.
Yeah.
You don't want to be playing with them. Oh god, they might be watching. I'm just kidding. Daniel.
Well, you Tickle, are you hopeful moving into Shadowlands then? Obviously it sounds like there's a lot of very positive changes coming to the class and very exciting stuff. But with what you've seen thus far in the alpha, is the because I've taken brief glimpses at people playing it. Yeah. It looks like the game is really being flipped upside down, and I know it's kind of that way every single expansion, but I mean, just down to the basic cosmetics of the game, the aesthetics. Yeah. It really seems like they're tuning the game to encourage new players to come in, and even for the people that have been playing it for 15 years, a new experience. And to me, that's a positive thing, because I know that video games can't survive without a constantly renewing player base.
Right.
But somebody that's actually on the field, on the ground right now, what do you see in that?
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm hoping that what I'm seeing is Blizzard's doubling down on the fact that they might know that BFA was like questionable, and a lot of people view it as not a good X-Pack or like lower. I think that they're really focusing on it. They get it. I think they are trying to double down on it. The game itself, like you mentioned, like the zone that they brought us in first is like beautiful. Like the gameplay, I got the shivers when I first logged in. I was like, this is a good sign. So that was good. For Shaman specifically, and for a lot of classes, I really do think they're going away from what they did in BFA, which was, let's give you infinity passive buffs using Azerite traits. Like when you're in BFA, you have so many mini things that happen because you have like 5 buffs on your helmet, 5 buffs on your shoulders, 5 buffs on your chest piece that are doing something. They're putting like buffs up on your bars, and you're like at any time, you could have like 2 rows of buffs, and they all do something, and it augments your gameplay, which is like, okay, that's kind of cool, that's kind of flavorful, sure. But then you get the neck piece, which also gets you doing passive damage, passive stuff. Like there's so many things happening, and now you have corruptions, and it's just it's overwhelming.
Preach made a video on the number, like why people were experiencing lag in raid.
Really?
And I don't know if you saw it, but he literally he brought out a dice for every single proc chance thing that was in the game. And he, like, at the end of the video, he was like, this is just one balanced druid.
Yeah.
These are the number of dice that are rolling right now in a 5-second window. And people are wondering why they're experiencing so much lag this expansion as opposed to other ones. And it's because the Azerite, the Essence, all of that stuff is absolutely bonkers. And
absolutely.
It's nice to see a little bit of a refreshing thing. And the other thing I'm very excited for, myself having tried to get my wife to play the game a number of times, the new starting zone for like 1 to 10 sounds so cool, and the concept behind it seems years behind what other MMO games have already tried to do. So it's refreshing to be able to see that. And myself as a classical WoW player, I am going to miss the the race identity starting in your own zones and whatever.
Yeah.
But I think this is all around a good thing. The one thing I did hear though that was kind of hysterical was that you're gonna come. The new starting area is all enhanced graphics. Everything looks good. It's up to date, and then automatically you're dropped outside of Minecraft Stormwind. So
yeah,
but no, I'm very positive with what I've seen thus far. The Covenant abilities I think is going to be shaken around a number of times.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen, and I don't know how much you guys have really looked at each of them and gone through the blue post, but for feral druids, you know, the mentality would be like, okay, well, obviously druids are probably going to go Night Fae, like that just makes sense for druids. And it actually seems like it's the Night Fae ability that's going to be the most optimized for feral druids to do what they do. So I'm curious of if they're trying to, like, you know, weasel people in that way, but you know, the finished product is so far away from alpha right now that I think we're getting such early on booming outcries against how it's set up that I have a very hard time believing that after what they did with Azerite pieces and BFA, they're going to allow the Covenant abilities to roll down the line exactly like they are. So I'm expecting some changes moving forward, but hopeful nonetheless. I think there's some pretty neat systems and excited to see them develop.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying too with the Covenant. I mean, that it's a risky business because the first thing, like when you go into the alpha, you log in. I went to my character sheet. I was like, no Azerite traits, no Azerite essences, no crazy trinkets, no corruptions, like checking off the boxes. So I was like, all right, how do I play my character again? All you have to do is open up your spell book, read your spells, open up your talents, play your talents, and that's it. So like your buff bar doesn't get crazy number of buffs. It's so clean. And I actually realized that after I played alpha, like I didn't even log into BFA for like 5 days, and I was only playing the alpha. I was literally at peace. Like I was like not stressed out. I logged into BFA and I was like, oh, I got to switch my traits around. I got to switch. Yeah, I was like, there's so much to balance, and I'm hoping that it helps from like gear sets. Like you don't have to keep Azerite traits forever. Like I personally keep like every chest, shoulder, helmet. I will keep forever, just in case there's any balancing, because you may never see that piece again. Like that's crazy.
RNG is minimizing misery in this
I have
game
like
right now.
4 different sets for just as an arms warrior. That's it. It's not for playing prot.
And the crazy thing is that none of them are as good as they would be in Fury, and that's the upsetting thing. Hey, I'm an arms guy too. I love arms.
Bullshit! You're playing a Fury warrior.
He's at least 2 patches out of date right now.
I could tell.
That was when I played a Shadow Priest
so
after that.
So, damn.
Coming in with that fire.
Well,
Tiqql, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us today. You've given us a lot to think about moving forward, and definitely a lot of cool information on enhancement shamans. I'm actually kind of interested in hopping in BFA and just playing around with one right now, because I did in Legion a little bit play around with enhance, and it was a very cool concept. Obviously, having the Doom Hammer, as Justice has there in the background, was a big incentivizer there. So
that's where it went.
I definitely want to play more specs like Survival Hunter, Enhancement Shamans, things that aren't really utilized but have this really cool concept and identity behind them. And if I can say one thing that I hope they maintain moving into the next expansion, with as much of a breakdown of the overall class into all 3 or 4 specs, I would like to see them maintain the diversity between each of the specs. I want it to be more than 3 buttons that determines whether you're an enhancement shaman or an elemental shaman, and them to be able to maintain that moving forward. And it seems like they are right now, but as long as they keep that up, I think it's going to be a very cool experience and something neat that everybody can kind of dive into.
Yeah, I'm really hoping so. And I would say the other one, the flavorful one, is Marksman Hunter. I don't know why, but Marksman Hunter feels like literally I don't know why. People were saying that it hasn't changed that much, but it feels so satisfying. I don't know why. They did bring volley back, which is like the big AoE circle as well. I mean,
does it have little blue dots on it?
No, it's actually just like hardcore arrows this time with the blood of your enemy.
I liked all the little blue.
I've always loved Marksman, and it stinks that if you play a Hunter, essentially the way the game is right now, you have to play Beastmaster. You don't have to, but in order to fill the niche that people are looking for, you have to.
Right.
And again, going back to every other MMO you can think of, you get in there and there's Ranger. You can be a Ranger. You can be somebody who just shoots arrows, and that is what Marksman is. And it's so even in PvP, you see a lot of survival. You see some Beastmaster at the lower levels, not a lot, but Marksman always seems to kind of take the backseat to the other 2. And it'd be cool to see that come back out on the front page. So
absolutely.
Is there anything you'd like to? Well, we should let Tiqql. tell people what he does, right? Tickle.
Yeah. I mean, I stream on Twitch every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I put out YouTube content. Putting out a lot of stuff for Alpha right now. Like, I actually feel bad forever. Like, there's most people are playing BFA, but I'm just like not. I'm mostly playing Alpha of like all the classes, and then like some BFA stuff. But yeah, it's putting out content YouTube, Twitch. Trying to get Touchpad to play with me in Arena, but hasn't gone so well yet.
I'm finally online at the times you are.
That is true, actually. I'm
finally online at the times you are.
That is true, actually.
We finally got each other on BNet after like a year of knowing each other.
That is also true.
We finally started talking more, and I was like, "What is this? What's going on with us? Like, why did I take this one?"
It's true. But yeah, that's about it. That's all. That's all I'm about.
We will have all of Tiqqlethis links in the description below, as well as Touchpads of mine. So for now, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us here at Between Two Beards. And for everyone out there, stay safe, and thank you very much, Tickle, for joining us today.
Thank you, buddy.
Appreciate it, guys.